ahead. All right. Yeah. I am Ryan with Huntsman Wildlife. Huntsman Wildlife is a nuisance wildlife removal company. Homeowners and businesses call us to remove nuisance wildlife because most have no idea where to start. So we remove the animal, we clean up the mess that was made, repair the damage that was done, because bottom line, the only unhonored house guest in your home that you want is your in-laws. We are an ODNR licensed company. We do nuisance wildlife. We don't do wildlife, and that's something that I'll discuss more, especially when we talk about predator canines. So there's a distinct difference between nuisance wildlife and wildlife. When you call me, you're calling me about nuisance wildlife. If you have wildlife issues or concerns, that's where something like the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, their wildlife division, parks department, cities, stuff like that, that would be a better option. Huntsman Wildlife has a strong focus on exclusion and prevention. I would rather, if I could run my entire business and not have to trap out and kill a single animal, I would love that. It'd be great for the animals, it'd be better for public perception. Unfortunately, there are situations where lethal methods have to be used. We do have regulations under the state that certain animals are considered rabies vectors, so when we capture them, we have to euthanize them. And also in the state of Ohio, nuisance wildlife removal companies, trappers, whatever you want to call them, and wildlife rescues cannot work hand in hand. So a lot of people ask me, Ryan, why don't you just take your fox, your coyotes, your raccoons, your squirrels to a rehabber, have them rehab them and release them? Well, Ohio doesn't like that to happen. In 2 months, we're doing a presentation on keeping wildlife wild, and we're gonna explain more about that kind of relationship between what happens when you translocate or drop off animals somewhere else, or you don't address an animal that's become habituated to living around humans or structures. We are a veteran-owned company. I did work for Uncle Sam for 4.5 years, and we are family-owned. By family, I mean my wife and I, and the 72 mouths on our farm. All of our kids have tails and feathers, but they keep us pretty busy. We do spend a lot of energy and time in the community, not just doing presentations like this, but we like to help out with civic and charity organizations that we feel are important. Obviously, animal programs are a big thing to us. Being a veteran organizations are a big thing for us. And then a lot of people don't realize this. Many of the operators that you're gonna find on social media, when you just put out a post saying, hey, I have a raccoon issue on my home, many of them are just guys working out our shed and they're not exactly insured. I will tell you, raccoon damage, squirrel damage, fox and coyote issues, if the operator you hire is not fully insured, the liability falls on you for any work they do. So if I set a trap on your property and I don't have insurance, and that trap catches somebody's kid or pet, the liability falls on you. And that's why I always tell people, as much as it'd be nice to have your neighbor help you out with trapping things out, there are liability issues that get very, very tricky. So that's why you want a professional licensed company taking care of your nuisance issues. Me and myself have been in this industry for about 17 years. I'm a member of the National Wildlife Operators Association. We actually just a couple weeks ago joined the Ohio State Trappers Association. I have certifications through Purdue University. I'm not quite a Boilermaker, but the amount of time and energy that I've spent into online courses, I sometimes feel a little bit. When I make my final 4 brackets in March, I usually put Purdue going longer than they actually deserve, just because I have so many certifications through them. I have held licenses in both pest control and nuisance wildlife in Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, North Dakota, Indiana, Kentucky, and Illinois. Currently, the only license we hold is in Ohio because I just don't like driving. It's 14 hours back to Minneapolis, and so I don't want to do raccoon trapping in Minneapolis. However, I did get an email yesterday. Somebody watched a YouTube video of ours and wants to fly me out to Brazil to solve their bat problem. Could be fun, but you know, people write things on the internet. I do have extensive training when it comes to vertebrate control, meaning 4 legs and fewer, not insects. I spent 4 years in Minnesota taking care of the rodent concerns at the Mall of America. I don't know if you're familiar with that structure. It's a 7.7 million square foot building. I had to keep it mouse free. I've taken a lot of seminars and classes through different universities, different speakers. I really am passionate about vertical control. And again, when it comes to exclusion and deterrence, that's your best option. You know, trapping works, obviously, it's what I do. But your better options are going to be finding ways to keep the animals out of your home or away from your yard in the long term. So today, for the presentation, we are going to talk about canine predators. When I talk about canine predators here in the Cincinnati area, we have 3 main ones: the coyote, the fox, and the feral dog. Now I want you to remember, feral dogs in the state of Ohio are considered any dog that is allowed off leash, off property. If your dog leaves your property and is on your neighbor's property, that is considered a feral dog.
Wow.
If your neighbor knows that that's your dog, if that dog has a collar on it, that dog is still legally in the state of Ohio considered a feral dog. The same applies for cats. And Ohio has very, very comfortable laws for cat and feral dog control. Wild pets are not always a good thing. You know, I know people like to, especially out on this side of town, you know, Felicity, New Richmond, Bethel area, they just let their dog out or they let their cat roam free, which is fine if that's what you want to do. But know that your neighbor or your neighbor's neighbor can do whatever they want with that animal if they perceive it as a threat to their livelihood, to their property, to their pets. So that's the price you pay. In the state of Ohio, feral animals can be trapped. Now, we do some feral animal trapping. We're very picky about the clients that we take for feral cats, for sure. And feral dogs, we tend to, usually dogs are microchipped, and so we'll take them, you know, to the nearest shelter and even a vet and get them read and be like, hey, your neighbor hired us to trap this dog and we caught it. And so it's one of those, I always want to reiterate to people before we go through this, even though we're going to talk about feral wild dog packs, feral dogs can be your dog that gets out of the yard. And, you know, there are a lot of people around here who will deal with animals however they like. So the red fox, a lot of us are familiar with it. It's a smaller canine species, red, brown, black, black legs, you know, very bushy tail, pointed snout. They're around 14 to 20 inches high at the shoulders and usually anywhere from 5 to 30 pounds. Now, the reason that fluctuates is a lot to do with the year and the food resources. A 30-pound red fox is a big, fluffy dog. That is a very large red fox. Can they get that way? Absolutely. For instance, if you have a bird feeder or a wildlife feeder in your yard and you've got a constant flow of chipmunks and birds and all that, you could grow a 30-pound fox because there's a consistent food source. Regular, if there's just a family of red fox in, say, East Fork Lake Park that doesn't necessarily have access to such an abundant food source, they're going to be closer to around that 8 to 11-pound range. Like it says here, their diet is mainly small rodents, birds, fruits, berries, acorns, grasses, and tubers. Oddly enough, we don't have a lot of those naturally here in Ohio when it comes to wild tubers, but they will dig up tubers and eat them, especially in the winter if there's not an abundance of other food sources and they can break the crust of the ground. It's not too frozen over. They will go after that. Habitat-wise, they really like wooded areas with clearings with dense vegetation. So anywhere that's got tall grasses in an open area next to a wood line, you're definitely usually going to find a red fox family. Denning sites are going to be fallen trees, ditches, culverts, and then neglected human structures. Notice I say neglected. They're not often going to go underneath a porch or a patio that's used. But if you have a shed on the back of your property that you just store stuff in and you don't really go around there, you keep the grasses tall, they'll sometimes burrow under that. But as long as the yard's being used, as long as it's being maintained, rarely is a red fox ever going to den up inside the yard. Usually it's barns that aren't being maintained, houses that, bank-owned properties. We deal with that a lot where banks will call us and say we have fox underneath our patio. Or if you have a specific area of the yard that does not get used. Commonly in suburbia, that's going to be your front step, because most of us that live in suburbia, we go through the garage. So there's not a lot of activity in the front step, and so they'll, commonly, not all the time, but you end up with a smaller animal like a groundhog or a skunk will be the first to burrow underneath that. They will either move out, end up dying for whatever reasons, the homeowner traps them out, leaves the burrow, and then the fox will just extend it and make it bigger. Excuse me. Second one we have is an eastern coyote. Now, we've seen the Facebook posts, the Instagram pictures, the YouTube videos of coyotes the size of German Shepherds. Their size is 48 to 60 inches long, and they're about 16 to 20 inches at the shoulder and around 30 to 50 pounds. I have a German Shepherd. I have 2 German Shepherds. They are much bigger than that. No lie, this is not a shrunken down size of an eastern coyote. This is about the size of a standard eastern coyote. I put it on the ground next to me. That's Snoopy. Do they grow bigger? Absolutely. You can get the rarity where you're going to get a bigger canine, but most of your coyotes are not nearly as big as people think they are. When you hear about the coyote took down my black lab or my pit bull, we're going to go into it in a second, but it might not have been a coyote. This is what we're dealing with in our backyards. This is what we're dealing with in our wood lines. This is what lives in the culverts, back in the sheds, down trees, a dog this size on average. So they are quite possibly the most resilient and adaptive animal in the United States. There's not a single habitat they cannot find a way to exist and oftentimes thrive in. Be it Washington Park in Cincinnati or 20 miles out east of here in the middle of nowhere, coyotes will always find a way. They're amazingly adaptive creatures. We'll go into it at the end of the presentation, but there's a book on that top shelf there by Dan Flores called Coyote America. And the amount of effort and energy that the United States government and cattle associations and sheep associations and hobbyists and hunters and trappers have tried to decimate the coyote population. We've done great doing that to, things like wolves and the red wolf, especially in the southeast. I mean, that was decimated very quickly. Bears, mountain lions, bobcats, but for whatever reason, the coyote is just like, nope, nice try, we're gonna continue. We'll go into some of the issues that overhunting or high levels of predation on the coyotes actually make them go, all right, I'll see your efforts and then raise you, and then just, boom, their populations. Diet-wise, they are opportunistic feeders. There's a list of their natural consumption, but there's nothing they're not going to eat. I call them 4-wheel drive recycling bins. That's what coyotes are. They're right up there with the opossums in the fact that they will, if they find a meal, they will take it. And that's part of their resiliency and their ability to adapt. Everything from roadkill to small rodents, birds, pizzas, trash, garbage. They'll eat just about anything their body can digest, and over the millennia, the coyote has learned to digest just about anything we can provide for food. Habitat-wise, again, there's not a place in the United States you're not gonna find coyotes. The eastern coyote and western coyote are quite literally almost separated by the Mississippi River. Eastern coyote you're gonna find, when you break down the DNA structure, is more of a cross of the western coyote and the gray wolf. So the eastern coyote is gonna be a little bit bigger than the western coyote, but the eastern coyote is more, I don't wanna say commensal because they don't exactly work in conjunction with humans, but the eastern coyote is more likely to be around human populations than western coyotes will. But here in Ohio, all we have are the eastern coyotes. Now, as for the feral dog, again, we talked about legally what a feral dog is, but a lot of places here, especially in Appalachia and the borders of Appalachia, which pretty much is where we are, deal with feral dog populations. It's not something that is commonly talked about because there are animal rights organizations, political action committees that say, well, at some point, genetically, they were someone's pets, so we cannot address them or deal with them the same way we would with wild canines like fox, like coyotes, wolves, stuff like that. Feral dogs are actually the biggest threat to our community here in Cincinnati. Commonly, again, like I said, I'll get calls about coyotes the size of German Shepherds. It likely is a feral dog. As it says here, coloring-wise, they're going to be, this picture here is a prime example of what a 3 or 4 generation feral dog is going to look like. It's an amalgamation, a mutt mix, but usually your feral dogs are going to be your larger breeds, mainly because survivability. So your German Shepherds, your Dobermans, your Labs, your Huskies, your all of those larger dogs that are able to run down, take down prey, not become prey to other dogs, are going to genetically combine to create, in essence, a feral dog population. Most of their consumption is going to be refuse. It's going to be our waste, it's going to be carrion. Rarely are they going to seek out food because genetically it's just not ingrained in them to be hunters the way that other canine species would be. So really they are dependent on human populations and the waste we create, and then the carrion left over from other animals. Size is going to be larger than your coyote, and like it says here, often has a German Shepherd or Husky-like appearance. Now I'm telling you, this dog and that dog at 100 yards out in the middle of a field are very difficult to make a distinct difference out of. And so sometimes when you hear about people saying, yeah, a coyote the size of a German Shepherd may in fact be a feral dog. And we do have feral dog packs in Clermont County. Again, they're not talked about because, no, they're not middle of Bethel. They're not, roaming the streets of Amelia or whatever. They are absolutely reclusive beyond belief. Like, you think it's hard to see a fox. Coming across a feral dog pack is rare, mainly because a lot of feral dogs are feral because of mistreatment from humans. They've been abandoned, they've been abused, and so they have a ingrained mistrust of humans, so they will avoid us, and they'll only come out at night. They'll only come out for feeding. Huh. So how often do you guys hear about so-and-so attacked, or a coyote attacked my dog, or a coyote came after me and my kids, or I was being stalked by a coyote? Again, it's, I'm not saying there's a community full of liars, but for every post I see on Nextdoor, Facebook, or LinkedIn, I take with an extremely, extremely large tablespoon of salt, not even a grain of salt, a tablespoon of salt.
Coyotes can be so controversial. Well, on Nextdoor,
mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
So between 1960 and 2006, between the United States and Canada, there were 159 attacks. Between two countries, over 46 years. 49% of those attacks were in California, 13 in Arizona. So over half of those were just in one small little pocket of the country. 37% of those 159 attacks were predatory, and of those, 52 of them were children under the age of 10. Now, all these statistics are going to tell you one thing. If you really look into them, 30% of the attacks were in situations where the dog was being fed intentionally. Meaning, oh, come here, cute little puppy. Somebody's out in the park and decides to feed the coyote, or somebody decides to, go for a walk with their dog off leash in, the middle of spring when it's pup season, and it just. Coyotes are canines, so by nature, they are defensive of their territory and their offspring. If you encroach on those, they're going to defend them. And if they think they have even half of a fighting chance to defend it, they're going to. A coyote defending their territory against 250 pound, 6 foot tall me, not great odds for the coyote. 10-year-old kids, how tall? What? 3 feet maybe? 40, 50 pounds? Sounds about the same size as a coyote. So that's why I tell people, most of your coyote interactions, your negative coyote interactions, your negative human interactions with coyotes are because somebody tried to have a Disney moment. Somebody tried to feed them, somebody tried to be one with nature or what have you, and it just never good. There is a lot of information and research on urban coyotes that, I could spend honestly 3 hours going over it. urbancoyoteresearch.com. It's a combination of information, from both the United States and Canada and the Ohio State University. And it is a fantastic research option. It's easy reads. It's not white papers and journals that you get lost in with scientific names and a bunch of jargon. They really do break it down very easily for the general public to consume the information and know what's going on. But yeah, they're not quite the threat to humans that everyone makes them out to be. Now, feral dogs, on the other hand, in 2020, 2020, pack or feral dog human deaths in the United States was 9. 2021 was 6. This year is already at 6. I made this slide presentation 3 weeks ago. And so already for the year, we're at 6 deaths from feral dogs or packs of dogs. Meaning at that rate, a feral dog is 3 times more likely to kill you, not injure you, to kill you than a coyote will. And likely the biggest culprit of a coyote took my cat or a coyote took my dog. Mainly those are going to be feral dog attacks. Rarely are those going to be coyote attacks. Rarely are those going to be fox attacks. If they think in the middle of the night some wild dog like a coyote came and took their little dog or their cat, I'll bet even money it was a feral dog. Again, combination of mistreatment in humans and other negative interactions has ingrained a distrust and aggression towards humans. Even if it has a collar, even if it looks like it's groomed, never, ever approach a feral dog. If you don't know who the dog is, nothing drives me more up the wall than people saying, I saw this dog on the side of the road, so I went up to it, put it in the back of my car. You don't know that dog. Call animal control, call the police, but 6 people already in this country have died this year from feral dogs. Died. That's the statistics for bites and harm are astronomical when it comes to dogs, but they don't track that for feral dogs, because really what happens with feral dogs is you die. You don't get hurt, you don't get injured, you die. They kill you because they're that aggressive, they're that upset. And A feral dog can have a collar. A feral dog can look like a German Shepherd, can look like a Doberman. Do not approach a dog in your yard, in the woods, on the side of the street that you don't know. They're a bigger danger to you than coyotes or fox. Canine threats to livestock. Really, livestock is only about 14% of coyote diets. And one of the things, and again, why I love Coyote America by Dan Flores, is a lot of the numbers we get for livestock or negative livestock interactions with coyotes come from ranchers, farmers, agriculture people. They wake up in the morning, they go out to check their herd, they see a dead animal, and they see coyotes on it. Their assumption is the coyotes have killed that calf, the coyotes have killed that sheep, the coyotes have killed X. There is a lot of unanswered parts of that. Can coyotes take down calves and sheep and goats? Absolutely. But could there have been extenuating circumstances where that death might have been caused by something else and the coyotes came across it because they are carrion eaters, they are four-wheel drive recycling machines? There is that possibility. So there's not a lot of definitive research that coyotes have killed those prey. Do they kill prey? Absolutely. I lost about 9 ducks last year to coyotes. Now I lost my ducks because I made mistakes and did not protect my ducks. So they are hunters, but when you hear about, packs of coyotes taking down deer, it's possible and it's happened, but it's rare because that costs them a lot of calories and a lot of effort to take down a deer. In an area like Clermont County, there is so much that we as humans create for food for the coyotes between our waste, between roadkill, between, they're not out there chasing down the deer like some of the coyote hunters would want you to believe. They're not fawn killers like some say they are. Because really when there's fawns out, there's also a crud load of rodents, there's a crud load of birds, there's a crud load of small game that are much easier prey for them to pick up than a fawn. Fox tend to actually predate livestock birds more than coyotes will. Most of the time, coyotes are going, or fox are going to be able to get underneath the fencing inside the coops a lot easier than coyotes will. So things like turkeys, ducks, chickens, geese that people raise in the backyard are often going to be the prey of fox. Again, from 1990 to 99, according to lamb and goat raisers, about 2% of their offspring or their kids or the young sheep were lost due to coyotes. Those numbers do not account for natural deaths that the coyotes then came upon during the night. And that's where I don't always trust the numbers that come from agriculture, stockmen associations, because they're counting on, I woke up in the morning and went out to my flock, there was a dead, lamb, and the coyotes were eating it. There is a high mortality rate for young animals. Having a small little hobby farm on my own, I've learned firsthand, not every baby that's born is going to make it. And so even though the lamb might have made it to month 3 or month 4, then something might have happened. Animals are heartbreakers and they sometimes just die in the middle of the night. And if a coyote comes across it, did the coyote kill that lamb or did that lamb die from something else? Now I'm not saying coyotes are not going to take down lambs, especially your western coyotes. They are going to go after agricultural and livestock issues. But again, you have to sit there and go, did the dog show up before, did the dog cause the death or did the dog show up after the death? Canine risks to pets, feral and stray puppies and kittens are going to be your biggest prey items for feral dogs, for coyotes, not really fox so much. Most companion animal consumption, meaning I saw a coyote with a cat or a dog in its mouth where it was eating it, is carrion. It's roadkill, or somebody shot somebody's dog that was on their property and left it But again, rarely are predatory canines like coyote or fox going to come into your yard, nab your dog, nab your cat, and run away with it. Does it happen? Yes, but it's very, very rare. Not nearly as popular as Facebook and Nextdoor make you want to believe it is. The Urban Coyote Project I mentioned did a survey, I want to say, of 86 coyotes and their stomach content. Less than 1% of the stomach contents had feline DNA in it. And again, they account for that as mainly being carrion or roadkill consumption. They're not out there hunting, coyotes are not out there hunting cats like you think they are. Coyotes cannot climb. That's one thing I always tell people. If you've been around outdoor cats or barn cats, they will scurry up a barn or a tree faster than you can blink. So cats rarely are going to be, adult cats are rarely going to be a food source for coyotes. Companion animal predation by any predator canines comes down to one simple and easy thing. And I lose a lot of friends and a lot of support when I say this, but it's from pet owners who are not responsible. If you let your cat or your dog run free outside of containment, it's the price you pay. If you leave your cat or your dog outside in your yard in the dark at night, that's the price you pay. If you're feeding dogs or cats outside at night, that's the price you pay. It is not the fault of the wild animal for doing what a wild animal does. It's the fault of the owner not being a responsible pet owner to protect that animal. That's really what it comes down to. If a coyote takes your cat, that's on you. If a fox takes your chicken, that's on you. When the coyotes took my ducks, that was my fault. That's not the fault of the coyotes. I screwed up. I didn't have the right fence around the pond because for the first 3 years I lived on that farm, that pond never froze over. Well, we got cold last year and that pond became a frozen iceberg. And coyotes don't like to swim, but they got no problem running across ice. I screwed up as a duck farmer and I left my ducks open to predation. I didn't go out there and start trapping all the coyotes on my farm because they killed my ducks. I said, nope, next summer, I need to build a fence around this entire pond so that no coyotes can get in. That's on me, you know? And so it's not just me saying that there's bad pet owners out there. It's not that you're bad, you're just irresponsible. There's a difference. Canine threats to watermelons. This is exactly what I was talking about, that coyotes are recycling machines, are four-wheel drive recycling machines. They'll eat whatever is available. So don't make whatever available, including your pets. Because again, commonly what will happen is your dog or your cat will get out, it will cross the street, it will get hit, and then the coyote, the fox will come across it. And that's how they become consumption a majority of the time. Now that I've told you everything about the dogs and about how to keep your pets and your kids away from them, here comes the fun part. You knew it was coming, didn't you? You knew it was coming.
Could I take it in your yard?
I know.
Stop feeding wildlife. Mother Nature does a fantastic job providing for them. You know what? Driving, we do a fantastic job providing for predator canines here in Cincinnati. Our cars feed them great. We don't need wildlife feeders to do it because the bird seed, as we know, the fox will eat the seed. Sometimes the coyotes will. But the squirrels, the chipmunks, the birds are all food sources for these predator canines. And so if you've got a bird feeder in your backyard, or a wildlife feeder as we like to call them, then you're also feeding all the other wildlife that goes with that. So know that that comes part of it. Trash and refuse containers. If you have a active, I don't like to say high population, but an active population of wild canines in your area, looking into options for either keeping your trash or refuse containers inside a structure, be it a shed or a garage, when it's not trash day, is the best option. Otherwise, finding ways to latch or lock the container are another option, because once a coyote or once a fox or even raccoons figure out that your trash is unsecured and an easy and reliable food source for them, they will just keep visiting those refuse containers, and then that becomes, I don't want to walk a quarter mile from where my den is to Mrs. Smith's trash container, so I'm going to find a new place to live closer to Mrs. Smith's trash container. Fence in the gardens, fence in the gardens, fence in your gardens. Coyotes eat watermelons. Coyotes eat just about anything. If you can put a fence around your garden, that's going to be preferred. A, you're going to have bigger yields. Less wildlife is going to take their cut of what you're growing. But B, it's going to, again, not provide that attraction for nuisance wildlife to come on your property. And again, not just predator canines, but does anyone know what the biggest loss of backyard tomatoes is? What causes it in the state of Ohio? Groundhogs.
Seriously?
They love tomatoes. They are like crack to groundhogs. Groundhogs love tomatoes. And it's, I'm telling you, if I had to pick one bait for the rest of my life to trap groundhogs with, it would be vine-ripened tomatoes. Not the stuff you can get at Kroger or Jungle Gyms. Literally, go to somebody's garden, grab a tomato, put it in a trap. I will catch a groundhog that day. They love tomatoes. And then obviously we know deer are gonna love your sunflowers, your beans, your peas, any of your tall vining, corn, of course. When you attract wildlife to your property, you attract the wildlife that eats that wildlife, and then you attract the wildlife that eats that wildlife. You guys are gonna love our squirrel presentation next week about how but fence in the garden, and then right here, this is kind of got a bunch of calcium buildup because I actually use this. This is a motion sensor sprinkler. It was $54 on Amazon, and it's one of the best things I ever bought. If you're a gardener and you do transplants, or even if you do direct seed gardening and you are tired of transplants getting tore up before they even have a chance to grow, or the birds just coming through and annihilating all the seeds you just sowed, motion sensor sprinkler. The sprinkler picks up motion, sends off that sprinkler, it starts watering everything, sends the animals running. Usually I run that for about 2-3 weeks once I start planting everything in my garden. So from Mother's Day to about 2-3 weeks later, that's just set up in the garden. I've got a couple of them because that sensor only goes about 180 degrees. And it's got it says, I want to say it's like a 30 or 40 foot range. Really, it's effective up to about 20-25. But for $55, this is a fantastic resource with how much we spend on our garden each year. Something to think about. But those also work well for predators, deer, stuff like that. They approach the yard. Yes, wildlife likes to be out in the rain. It's not so much that they're getting wet, it's the fact they're getting startled. They don't mind the getting wet part. It's not the fact that they're getting wet that sends them off. It's the fact that they approach the yard or the garden or wherever, and all of a sudden something startled them and they're suddenly getting wet by the loud noise of a sprinkler. So that's where that really comes into handy. Pet food out at night, don't. There's absolutely no need. There's not a single animal that is considered livestock or pets in our area that prefers to be fed at night. Outdoor cats, outdoor dogs, chickens, birds, turkeys, geese, pigs, goats, all of them. If you can put as much feed up at night as possible, you are going to lessen the wildlife or the negative interactions that wildlife have for your property. Because again, it might not be that the fox is coming to eat your birdseed, but they're coming for that little gray guy that's eating the birdseed. Because they love squirrels, they love chipmunks, they love mice. Same thing with fox, or with coyote. They're going after the rodents and the birds that are eating the birdseed. So if you leave those out at night, most of your rodent species are gonna forage at night. And so when the chipmunks, the moles, the mice are out foraging and the bird feeder in the middle of the night, your fox and your coyote are then foraging for them at your bird feeder. And so if you have your bird feeder closer than 25 or 30 feet from the structure, which is something I informed you not to do at the last presentation, I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but having bird feeders that close to the house mean the wildlife will be that close to the house. And then if you do have animals die on your property, move that very quickly. Have it removed. It's expensive if it's not 6 feet from the street. 6 feet from the street in most of this area, the city or the county will come take that animal out. Excuse me. But if you have a deer or a large, goose or something like that die on your property and you just leave it, first the vultures will come, and that's kind of fun to watch because they're amazing creatures. But once the vultures have eaten for the day, at night the fox, the skunks, the opossums, the raccoons, the coyotes, the feral dogs, they will come and continue that consumption. And again, if that's the night you decide to take your trash out or you let your dog out to go to a bathroom before bed, and those predator species are out in your yard, and all of a sudden your dog comes bounding out because it's his yard and he's okay with it. He's not, and that predator species now sees that as an aggressive action from that dog. So something to be aware of. That's why I've got a slide coming up about it, but number one thing you can do to prevent negative interactions at night with predator canines is turn the light on 2 or 3 minutes before you go outside. If you have an outdoor light for your front or your back, whatever door you're going through, turn the light on. Good fences make good ways to keep predator canines out. So I'm gonna pop over here, but different canines are gonna go through different portions of your fence. Your fox are not gonna go above your fence. Your coyote are rarely gonna go below your fence. So having options like a dig defense system, which just goes right into the ground in front of your fence, and as you see there, provides that barrier so that they can't burrow under. And then this product called Coyote Roller, when a canine goes to hop up or jump something, they're gonna use it as a push-off point or a pull-up point. When they do that, they roll right off. Now, I've had people say to me, because they've called me and I've gone out and I've given them an estimate on putting coyote rollers on their fence, and they look at the estimate, and we try not to induce coronaries, but it's not a cheap product. And so they're like, can I just use PVC? One PVC pipe over another PVC pipe, it'll roll. Problem is PVC out in the UV light over an extended period of time will dip, it'll cup, it'll bow, it'll warp, and then all you did was just add something else for them to grab onto. These stainless or these aluminum rails are really, really helpful. And not only do they keep the predator canines out, but I've sold these to customers who have escape artists for dogs. Dogs that like to dig under the fence to get out or jump over the fence to get out. This not only keeps the canines out of the yard, but it also keeps canines in the yard that you want to keep in. So definitely something that I recommend to people. Neither option is cheap. Both come at very high material costs and very high installation costs, but are absolutely worth it depending on the level of issue that you have. Like I said a couple of minutes ago, a much cheaper option is lights. Coyote, fox, absolutely love to work in the shadows and the dark, and they don't like to be seen. Lighting up the back of your yard like a ball field is your best option. I live right north of New Richmond in Ohio Township. I've got a little 8.5 acre hobby farm, but I will tell you, 2 or 3 minutes before my dogs go outside, I can see a good 100, 200 yards outside my back door. I have invested in very, very high lumen LED lights, and literally it looks like somebody turned on the lights at New Richmond football field in my backyard. But at the same time, I turn those lights on 2 to 3 minutes before I get out, or before any dogs go out there, so that any wildlife that's startled by the lights being turned on is not all of a sudden additionally startled by my 5 dogs bounding out the door, and now I've got battle royale going on in my backyard. You know, we have had a situation, the apple tree has since been cut down, but we had an apple tree in our backyard, and I turned on the lights 2-3 minutes beforehand, and I let the dogs out, and 3 of my dogs went straight to that apple tree and just started barking and growling. So I grab my flashlight and I look up, and we had scared an opossum up into the tree. Now, why was the opossum there?
The apples.
There you go. So I have apples that, you know, are rotted on the tree, and so we have a food source in the backyard. So the apple tree went, and I haven't had an opossum in the backyard. But had that opossum not had the opportunity to get up that tree, and my 3 German Shepherds decided to bound out that yard, I wouldn't have had 3 German Shepherds barking up a tree. I would have had 3 German Shepherds fighting over an opossum. Which do you want to do? And so turning on a light a couple minutes beforehand is a huge thing for keeping wildlife out of your yard in the middle of the night. The other thing to do, wireless security systems on fence lines are also a great idea, especially if you are very concerned about coyote or fox getting into your property. Motion sensor, you know, cameras like the Arlos, the Bings, the what do they call them, Nest or whatever, those Wi-Fi cameras, depending on how big your yard is. You can put one right on your fence line, staring down the fence line, so if anything goes over it, you'll get an alert. You'll know, all right, something's in my backyard. I can't go out there, or my dogs can't go out there until that's taken care of. A unit like this, you can, again, buy on Amazon for, I think it was $35 for a 2-pack. And this is a solar option. So it's not quite as bright as a hardwired solution would be, but it's still gonna light up those areas. Like for instance, we use lights like these around our chicken coop, in our duck yard, by the pens that our pigs live and sleep in. So that should anything want to approach those areas in the evening or during dark hours, it gets lit up and hopefully deters them from being there. Other things to do, think about when it comes to predator canines. Between March and May, try to avoid walking in the woods at dusk and at dawn. If you really must, carry a deterrent spray with you. Because again, it's one of those, they don't want to pick a fight with you, but if they feel like they're threatened, or their den is threatened, or their offspring are threatened, you're in for a bad day. Small little cans like these, not quite, you know, the aggressive pepper sprays for self-defense. Dogs don't need it that much, but just carrying a can of that in your backpack or clipped on your belt, you know, along with your dog waste bags. You can clip that on a leash, because do not walk dogs in the woods between March and May without a leash on. They will have a bad day, because your dog is going to smell that den or smell those pups and want to investigate it because your dog thinks other dogs are friendlies and want to get to know them. But the predator canines, the fox, the coyotes, the feral dogs, are not going to appreciate that very much. And that's usually where, again, most of those negative interactions with pets, it's because the dog was allowed to walk off leash during pup rearing season, and it's a really bad idea. So make sure, and then if you've ever done it, just don't do it again. But predator urine in your yard to deter rabbits, to deter, you know, raccoons. The problem is why do dogs urinate? Oftentimes to mark their territory. So if you have predator canines that visit your backyard on a frequent basis, that you're unaware of because they're not nuisance. Remember, at the beginning of this, we talked about wildlife versus nuisance wildlife. So if you don't have a nuisance issue with predator canines, and they occasionally come through in the middle of the night and visit your yard, but no big deal. But then all of a sudden you introduce new urine smells to that area. They don't know that you're just trying to keep, you know, the birds out of your garden or the mice out of your window wells. Instead, they're not worried that there's a new fox, coyote in their territory that shouldn't be. And now they're heightened awareness, higher anxiety, higher levels of defensiveness and aggression. All because all you did was sprinkle some urine granules or spray some fox urine around to keep wildlife out of your yard, your garden, whatever. Predator urine should only be used for one thing: attracting predators. We use predator urine for trapping. If I was to go out and set some trap lines to bring in fox or coyotes because I want to sell the fur, I'm going to use urines. Those urines are going to draw in the other dogs, guaranteed. So why the gardening community decided that was a really good idea blows my mind, because all you're doing is drawing those dogs to your gardens or to your backyard. Don't embarrass your pets. This is a very real product that has tens of thousands of sales on Amazon. It is called a coyote vest, and they sell them all the time on the West Coast. Yeah, $125 if you want one. Just don't walk with your dog in the woods off leash between, March and May, and you don't have to embarrass your poor little dog. So there's a very long explanation between correlation and causation. When your dog's wearing a vest like that, you're usually by it, or it's usually on a leash.
So you don't really need.
No. All right. So there are situations where predator canines truly do become a nuisance, where they're a problem and they need to be dealt with.
Oh.
This is a fake meme that somebody created. But we've all seen posts like this where, oh, I'm just trying to rescue it, or I'm so worried. Anything you read on social media, take with a tablespoon of salt. Not a grain. But if you do believe that you're having a predator canine issue, trust but verify. Make sure the offense and the offender are matching up. Did a coyote come into your yard and attack your 85-pound German Shepherd? Was it a coyote or was it a feral dog? If you have cameras, a lot of us, especially with the introduction of Wi-Fi cameras and the pricing, a lot of us have cameras on our property. Before you automatically assume that your cat or your dog got out and got stolen by a coyote or fox, check your cameras, see what's going on in that situation. Contact the Ohio Department of Natural Resource, wildlife professionals such as us. We're able to show up on a property and look for signs, look for evidence, look on your fence and see, is that a scrape because, the branches were up against it, or is that the dew claw from a coyote jumping over it? Do not trust social media. If there is one thing that makes me more money year after year after year, it is people who went on social media to ask first. That's a guaranteed way for me to make that sale 6 months later, is because they decided, I'm just gonna go on social media, ask my friends, and Jenny's sister's uncle's brother, used mothballs all over his truck to keep the coyote from, it's just, eventually, not only do I have to then take care of the canine issue, but then I have to clean up the mothballs. And I don't like cleaning up mothballs, they smell. I don't like them, naphthaline's gross. If you get to the point where you can verify that in fact it was a predator canine issue, then it comes down to you have two options. Predator canines in Ohio cannot be translocated. You don't want to make them somebody else's problem in somebody else's area, so it is a lethal control. You can either trap or you can hunt. Trapping is commonly what we're going to use because it's selective. I can sit there and go, okay, I need to trap one specific canine. I need to make sure it's the area it's going in. So we're gonna do a lot of pre-work for it. We're gonna set trail cameras. We're gonna watch a few days and see what the activity of that animal is, and we're gonna trap specifically for that one specific canine. Hunting, or with trapping, we tend to get less pushback because it's less public. You're not gonna hear the gunshot, you're not gonna have a bunch of guys showing up in pickup trucks and big lights and all that stuff that comes with nighttime coyote hunts. Nighttime coyote or fox trapping is very quiet, it's very, very low key. I've done it in neighborhoods of people have never known that we've had 24 foothold traps in somebody's yard overnight to get a canine out of there. However, hunting's quick, it's effective. It's gonna achieve control as soon as possible, but there is also a lot of secondary issues with it when it comes to public perception. You cannot always guarantee, because usually with coyote hunts, you're going through a scope, so you're not 100% sure that that is the canine that's the offender. That's not the one that's habituated to coming on the property. You're just going out and killing however many dogs you can get in X number of nights, hoping that solves the problem. Either one is effective. It gets coyotes, it gets fox, it gets feral dogs out of that scenario. And really it depends on what route you want to go. I would say the more suburban you are, hunting is not going to be an option, mainly because of city ordinances and allowing firearm use inside the city limits. But at the same time, if you're hoping to try and keep things a little bit lower key, and like for me, I've got 8.5 acres, but I don't want 3 or 4 guys out in my woods in the middle of the night shooting off rounds, waking up my entire neighborhood. I can control coyote populations on my property if I need to, with foothold, body grip, and snares. Is that rain?
I think it is.
You left your.
I mean, it was supposed to start raining. You guys had thunderstorms like.
They're all
Wow. Do you guys need a minute to go close things up?
No, it's fine.
Okay.
I'm the one who'll be sitting in the line.
It is rain.
Yeah.
All right. Next thing we have is population control. We talked in the beginning about how coyotes are amazingly adaptive animals. That this little picture that I found online, kill a coyote, save a fawn, and adapts under pressure, increases the litter size from 5 to 16 pups. That is not an exaggeration. These dogs will double their litter size in a year if you drop populations in an area. Yeah, one of the things I always tell people is both predator canines, the coyote and the fox in our area, not counting the feral dog, but coyotes and fox are territorial. Like I was telling you about the coyote urine for gardening. If they sense or pick up a dog in their territory that they're not okay with, there will be an altercation and that dog will likely get sent off. A non-aggressive, non-nuisance coyote in your backyard is the best thing to have because it's keeping the nuisance aggressive coyote away from your yard. A coyote in your backyard is not a problem. A coyote in the woods in your neighborhood is not a problem. A coyote crossing the street a half mile from your home is not a problem. If they're not a nuisance, if they're not causing problems for your pets, your family, your property, my suggestion is always to leave them. The coyote or the fox that's doing what a coyote or fox is supposed to is not going to be a concern. But getting rid of that fox, getting rid of that coyote because you don't like the way it looks, opens up that territory. And that opens up that territory for a coyote or a fox who might be a nuisance come in. And so that's why I always tell people that adage, the only good coyote is a dead coyote.
I see people say that.
Yeah, it's not because, again, I lost 8 ducks last year to coyotes, but I have not trapped coyotes on my property because I won't. Because they don't mess with my chickens, they don't mess with my pigs, they're not up on my fence line, they're not coming after my dogs, they're not coming after my barn cat. Yeah, I have an outdoor cat, which I have come to terms with the fact someday I will lose because he is an outdoor cat. But those coyotes had an open meal, and that was my mistake. But the animals that I protect, responsibly, they don't go after. They understand their boundaries. They don't cross fences. They don't cross lighting. And so I don't want new coyotes. I want the coyotes that are currently going through my backyard. Those are the coyotes I'm okay with. You see what I mean?
How do you know that it wasn't a fox that got your ducks?
Mainly because we don't have fox in our neighborhood.
Oh,
I
okay.
can't say why. It's not me, but one of my neighbors informed me that they took care of the fox population a while ago.
Okay.
And normally you're not gonna find fox and coyote in the same territory.
Okay.
Not so much that the coyote is gonna go after the fox.
Aren't they just competitors?
Yeah.
Or-
They're gonna battle for the same food source. They're gonna battle for the same denning site. And the prints, and the carnage.
Okay.
Fox are usually cleaner hunters than coyotes. Coyotes are not exactly the most graceful hunter in the world. And so again, this was middle of winter on ice and snow. You guys ever seen a John Wick movie?
Yeah.
That was my,
Oh.
yeah, it
my.
was just feathers and red. It was bad. So I was pretty certain it was
Okay.
coyotes. Now, could have been feral dogs, but I'd be one of the first to know if we have feral dogs over in my area of Ohio Township, and we don't. We have a resident coyote population. Gorgeous singers. Every couple nights we hear them singing at night. They run. We have a Duke easement for power lines. We call it the Coyote Highway because the deer go up and down it. The coyote go up and down it. You can hear them coming all the way, down and up. And but yeah, it is usually. And then just something to be aware of when you look at the size of the skull of the fox versus the size of the skull of the coyote. You're also going to look at paw prints, stuff like that. I'll give you ideas. So, that being said, you guys know about the cards. We kind of went that route. Free resources to check out. The books back there, there are some fantastic ones. Like I said, one of my favorites is up there right now. If you have an opportunity, Coyote America by Dan Flores is an amazing read.
Yeah, I want to read that.
They only have one copy here. I'm sure they can get more in, but it's a great book. So make sure to check those out. I'm not 100% familiar on a couple of those, but like I said, I've listened to, because I don't really take time to sit down with a book, but I spend a lot of time looking out a windshield, so I do audiobooks. And I've listened to Coyote America probably 3 or 4 times in the past 2 years. Dan Flores also has another book called American Serengeti. It's a great book. Talks about the wildlife in, kind of the wildlife frontier in the beginning and bison and all that. And he's a fantastic natural author here in the United States. It is very leaning towards the environmentalist side of things. But I still appreciated it as a wildlife operator, as a trapper and a hunter, that the information he gave there. Again, I made this slide before I saw it, but Coyote America by Dan Flores. Another good book to read is Rabbit, R-A-B-I-D.
I read that.
Yep.
Great book.
Great book, a lot of resources. U.S. Fish and Game is going to be a good resource, the Ohio Department of Natural Resources, and then urbancoyoteproject.com. And Urban Coyote Project is, like I said, out of Ohio State University, great resource, a lot of information. If you read something and it confuses you, or you want a little bit more information, they do have a contact us option on that website, and they are great at getting back to you. And like I said, they make it very easy to digest the information. Huntsman resources, we do have our website and blog, huntsmanwildlife.com. Our blog's been a little stagnant. I haven't put out anything new in a couple of months, just because I've been busy. I've been trying to find a way to take these presentations and at least get them on there. We do have YouTube and a podcast along with our social media. And so everywhere from Facebook, LinkedIn, Nextdoor, TikTok, all that fun stuff. pretty much I always tell people, if you're looking for a way to connect with us or get our information, it's a social media platform. Just type in Huntsman Wildlife and look for the stag H, just the H with the antler head. That's gonna be our logo everywhere if you wanna find us. When it comes to exclusion and preventing wildlife on your property, not just coyotes and fox and feral dogs, but including things like squirrels, raccoons, mice. Defending Your Castle is an ebook we came out with. It's about 7 to 8 pages. It's downloadable on our website. If you go up to the poster here, there's a QR code. You can scan it with the camera. That'll take you right to that link. Otherwise, you just go to our website, type in Defending Your Castle. It'll bring up the book. Great read there. And yeah, that is about it.